Mayoral candidate Samuel Speziale, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for being here.
You grew up in Anchorage. Just tell us a little bit about your family and anything about your past that would let people know a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm married. I've been married for approximately 17 years. I have 3 beautiful children with my wife, Joy, Marina, Ariana, and Sammy the fourth. I've lived in Anchorage since 1976. I've left a few times to attend school, which I didn't see all the way through. I left another time to go to a different state for work, but I've always kind of found a calling to Alaska, so I've remained here. I've lived here close to 35 to 40 years with those 2 brief stints in living, or leaving rather, and I just love Alaska. I love Anchorage.
And 2 of your children are still in the public school system?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
My daughter attends, she's 15 years old. She attends Bartlett High School. She's a freshman. My son, Samuel, he is in 5th grade at Creekside Elementary School, and he's looking forward to starting middle school next year.
You were telling me that they were a big part of why you've decided to run for mayor. Do you want to expand on that?
Yes, ma'am. I decided to show them that you could still try to achieve things higher than what is told that you're able to do. You can't let anybody tell you that you cannot do something, and you need to follow your dreams because that's the direction of where your life can go. And so that's why I decided to run for mayor. I think there's several issues in our city that need to be addressed, certain things that need to be called out upon that some people might be just too scared to stand up on the soapbox, so to speak, and have their 5 minutes on TV to talk about those things.
Do you want to get into a couple of those issues? You mentioned a few before we started today that you're pretty passionate about. So,
well, I believe that there's a big problem with alcoholism in Anchorage, not only alone in Anchorage, but statewide. And I know that I've suffered with problems with alcohol my whole life. I've recently become sober. I've drank since I was at the age of 11. I had a very abusive childhood growing up. Through no fault of mine, I'm not calling for a self-pity party. I chose and picked things that I did in my life, and I have to be responsible for those. But with that being said, I know if I went through those things, there's got to be a lot of other people that went through them. So possibly I might be able to enlighten certain citizens or groups to help alleviate the inebriate problem here in Anchorage.
So with your background and personal experience with it, you feel like you can bring something extra to the table as mayor to be able to,
yes, ma'am.
to help?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you want to expand?
I do. I believe that I have the capacity to be compassionate towards those that have a problem or dependency on alcohol, be it they have mental health issues, be it they were abused as a child or abused by their spouse. I've kind of run the gamut of all those things, so I believe I have a bank of information within inside of me from my personal past that I could apply.
How would you do that? Have you looked at sort of actual practical ways to help people that the city isn't currently doing?
I believe that we could form bands of volunteers that could go around with provide literature and either pamphlets or just verbally speaking with citizens to band together to try to help them, to extend a hand, to be compassionate to their problem, rather than just to say, oh, there's a person that's had too much to drink, and just drive by and wait for another person to possibly help them. I believe it's time to do something, and I believe the time is right now.
Do you feel like the city has the resources to do that? And I'm sort of inkling towards money, you know, the money situation. It always costs more to do extra things, doesn't it?
Sure it does. I'm not so sure that the city needs to be actually responsible for that. I think it's all the citizens that live in this town are responsible for that. We're a community, and whether you're at the top end of the community or at the bottom, we are all in this community, and we're all responsible to help each other as far as neighbors.
What other issues would you like to address as mayor if you're elected?
I would like to address the issues of all the violent crime that's going on in town, the shootings, the muggings, the domestic violence. I believe that there's a bigger picture of things, and rather than just expecting the city to pay for it, than expecting tax dollars to pay for it. I believe people need to be responsible, they need to be accountable for both community service and to volunteer some of their time. If every person in Anchorage was able to give 2 to 3 to 5 days out of the year, if you think of that many man hours to put into the situation, I believe it could really do some miracles here in town.
How do you think you'll wrangle people and convince them to do that?
I'm not sure. Maybe that they'll just maybe get on my wagon, so to speak, that there's the little guy that really doesn't have much experience in politics, but I know what's right and what's wrong. And I know from my past experiences in life dealing with those issues, I really believe that I could help change the world, starting with Anchorage, that we could become a footprint to show the rest of the state and the rest of the nation how to move forward and change the world, so to speak.
Are you worried about any of the economic issues that we've been talking about recently in terms of the state's budget and whether that will eventually impact Anchorage?
Yes and no. I believe that there's a lot of avenues that haven't been explored yet, especially with this marijuana initiative that's gone out. With reading all the things in the paper and seeing the things on the news, they seem to have generated a surplus of funds that would really be able to help out not only Anchorage, but all the other villages and towns that are within the state regarding that initiative. So I'm just waiting to see what is going to be decided upon with the Assembly and things in Juneau.
In terms of being able to get more revenue
Yes,
for Anchorage?
That's correct. To be divided through multiple ways, not just the alcoholism, but the domestic violence, children that need help, the school district. There's many avenues that I think that money could be applied to.
Tell us a little bit about what you did for work and what you professionally throughout the years.
Well, throughout the years, I've worked basically in the hazardous material industry, building demolition, building sampling as far as lead-based paints, asbestos, naturally occurring radioactive material that's built up scale inside oil production pipe. So I've been everywhere from the end of the Aleutians all the way north to Prudhoe Bay and down through southeast in the Panhandle. I have quite a bit of experience with that. So that's pretty much all I can draw on right now. I've just recently been terminated from my employer. That was quite an interesting story, but I don't think I really need to get into that into this interview. So I'm currently unemployed, looking for work, and I'm still going to strive to run for mayor of Anchorage.
I'm sorry to hear that. It was a 7-year position that you had actually been in, so now you're looking for something similar or maybe different?
Correct. Either similar or different. I need to provide for my family, so I'd be open to anything that I could have a good job, that I'd be able to provide a good product for whoever would decide to employ me.
Right. Your political background, is there anything in your background, or are you really, this is your first experience?
This is really my first experience. I can say the only other time, which is quite maybe a little bit comical, was running for president in 6th grade, which I didn't win, but that's probably the only experience I have. I'm not really looking to glorify my name. I'm looking to glorify Anchorage, to stand up for Anchorage, because I love Anchorage. I love living in Alaska, and I love being a United States citizen. And I'm just here to shake my fist, so to speak, to try to change things for Anchorage, to possibly set that this is a footprint for not only Anchorage and all the other cities in the great state of Alaska, but in the whole United States, that we need to try to change the status quo. If I am elected to the mayoral position, I pledge to donate at least 80% of my salary to charity, and I challenge every other city official, state official, and national official to donate at least a good portion of their salary, because it's all about public service. It's not about living high on the hog. It's about helping your fellow man, be it at the bottom of the food chain or at the top.
Is there anything else that you're disappointed with in the way that the city is running now that you would like to change?
I would like to change, or at least ask whoever how would be it possible to change the penalties for crime here in town. It seems like the crime is running rampant. There's people being shot and killed almost every day. There's muggings. There's all this domestic violence. I believe the penalties need to be increased. I think they need to be seriously looked at. A lot of our statutes, they need to be reevaluated.
In terms of sentencing, or?
Yes, ma'am, especially sentencing as a deterrent, possibly doubling everything. It might sound a little extreme, but maybe that would be a deterrent at that point.
What kind of swing do you think you would have as mayor to be able to achieve that?
I'm not so sure that I'd have a big swing as mayor, but I would possibly be able to get out and discuss with different groups as far as what their beliefs are, and I'd be wanting to represent every citizen here in Anchorage. It's not so much for me being mayor, it's me to represent the city, and I'd be willing to knock on everybody's door. I'd be willing them to send me emails. I'd be willing for them to call me at home. I'd be a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week mayor. I wouldn't be from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. You
were talking about the crime issue, and whether, I want to know, in your community where you live in town, have you seen anything happen close to your house and family, or is it just the general, this general situation that you've seen sort of on the news that kind of spurred you into action?
Well, in my personal experience, I've had my window shot out of my vehicle several times when there seems to be some kids that think that's a fun thing to do. I've been close to situations or times when people have been run over in traffic because they've had too much to drink, or either the person driving the car didn't see someone crossing the road, or the person crossing the road didn't quite cross it at the proper time, and they suffered the ultimate consequence. They lost their life. And I think that's a major thing that needs to be looked upon, the safety for not only drivers, but for the inebriated population that's here in town, the problem that we have. There has to be better solutions, and the time is now. We can't be waiting around to do something. The time is now to act.
I've heard that putting more community officers on the ground in terms of not police officers or firefighters or EMS attending to the chronic inebriate problem, but having the other community people come and assist them? Is that something that you were thinking about, so that it's not put on our officers and EMS to attend?
Yes, I would like to extend, not a challenge, so to speak, but to ask every person who lives in this great town of Anchorage, city of Anchorage rather, the municipality, that they could volunteer some time, you know, especially like now. I'm not gainfully employed, I'm looking for work, so I tend to try to go around town doing random acts of kindness rather. And I think if we were able to get a band of volunteers or some coordinators that could do so, we could really help out the police and the fire department, and be able to not only contact them, but to be an extra set of eyes that would possibly help in prosecuting people, to pull drunk drivers off the road, to get them off to the side before they actually take their life or someone else's, because they shouldn't be driving, things of that nature. Just
finally, is there anything else that you'd like to bring up and share about why you're running for mayor?
The biggest reason I'm running for mayor is to show my children that it doesn't matter where you come from, what you look like, or who you are. It's what you believe in. And no matter how many times you get knocked down, you got to pull yourself back up, and not to let anybody tell you that you cannot do anything. You need to follow your dreams, because that's the direction where your life will go, and you can always achieve.
Mayoral candidate Samuel Speziale, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.